Hello wine person, welcome to the video on Beaujolais. This video will help you in your WSET Level 3 in Wine course and exam preparation, and this video is part of the Thirsty and Wise Study and Support Program. Thanks so much for taking the time to invest in your wine knowledge and understanding. In this video I will be explaining Beaujolais' climate, grape growing, grape varieties, winemaking and appellations. So let's go. Even though Beaujolais can produce white and rosé wines, we're going to be focusing on production of red wines only. Beaujolais is the most southern part of Burgundy, but has totally different soils, produces different grape varieties. And in this part of Burgundy, it has a moderate continental climate that is well suited for early ripening and early budding Gamay grape. In this kind of climate, the Gamay grape can ripen properly and still retain high acidity, freshness, and bright red fruit. Gamay grape is it can be very vigorous and high-yielding grape, and for that reason, it is very important on what kind of soil it grows. So there's two main types of soil that is important in Beaujolais. One is the rich in nutrients alluvial soil, which is located on the eastern part of Beaujolais, close to the river Saône, and in southern part of Beaujolais. On this rich in nutrient alluvial soils, the Gamay grape is vigorous, can produce high yields, which leads to grapes with low concentration, which is usually used for Beaujolais Nuovo wines or Beaujolais wines. A granitic soil that is low in nutrients and naturally restricts the yields and vigor of Gamay is located in the north and western part of Beaujolais region. So this granitic soil naturally reduces the yields, which leads to a more concentrated grapes, which are more suited for Beaujolais Village wines and Beaujolais Cru wines. And also in the northern part of Beaujolais you have slopes, which also have better drainage and better sun exposure, which increases the ripeness of grapes here. There's two training systems that can be found in Beaujolais. One is the Gobelais system. So Gobelais is a small bush wine that is spore prune, so it has short spores, and it has the shoots are tied like in a bow on top in order to expose the grapes to the sun, so the grapes ripen properly, and also increases good airflow, which is good for combating with fungal diseases in the vineyard. So with the bush wines, you need to hand harvest it, and when you have hand harvested, you have whole bunches of grapes which are needed in Beaujolais, because in Beaujolais there's a lot of wines that are produced with carbonic or semi-carbonic maceration, which I'm going to explain in the next slide. And also there's vertical shoot positioning training system that are used in Beaujolais that can be machine harvested, but then you're not going to have whole bunches, but that's okay, because you can use this berries, meaning grapes that are not hand harvested, you can use them for Beaujolais Village or Beaujolais Cru wines. So there's only one grape that you need to know in Beaujolais, and that is Gamay. For Gamay, you need to understand that it's an early ripening and early harvesting grape, which means that it's suited more for a cool to moderate climate. Otherwise, in a warm climate, it would ripen too fast and it would lose the bright fresh fruit and the refreshing acidity. It can be a very vigorous grape. That's why the best Beaujolais wines are grown on granitic soils that restrict the yields, which leads to a more concentrated grapes, which are used for higher quality wines. Gamay as a grape is dominated by red fruit, has bright red fruit like cherries, cranberries, raspberries, medium to low in tannin, high in acidity, so really reminds of Pinot Noir, but it doesn't have that mushroom character that Pinot Noir is well known for. And because it's low in tannin, it can be served chilled very frequently. because the low temperature will not make the low tannin bitter, and it will also, the low temperature will increase the brightness of this bright fresh red fruit. Carbonic maceration. So there is 3 types of carbonic maceration. One is fully carbonic maceration, semi-carbonic maceration, and then whole bunches with crushed fruit. The idea with carbonic maceration is to produce low tannin wines that have very specific bright kind of banana, kirsch, bubblegum aroma. In order to make carbonic maceration, the bunches of grapes need to be whole, so you need to have whole unpacked berries, and also you need to have lack of oxygen and lack of yeast is not involved. So the first winemaking technique is a fully carbonic maceration. The steps to make steps for the full carbonic maceration means that you're going to have whole bunches of Gamay. You're going to add them to the tank. The tank is going to be flushed with CO2, carbon dioxide, to remove any oxygen. The tank is going to be closed, and because the berries are whole, because there's no oxygen and there's no yeast, the berries are going to start the intercellular fermentation inside the berry. So lack of oxygen, lack of yeast, whole berries, because of the lack of oxygen and yeast, the berries are going to start the intercellular fermentation inside the berry. So they're going to start creating the color inside the berry. They're going to start fermenting, and when they reach around 2% of alcohol, they're gonna burst and they're gonna release the juice. At this point, when we talk about full carbonic maceration, the grapes are gonna be pressed. So you're gonna separate the juice from the skin, and the wine will continue fermentation without the skin. This kind of fermentation, full carbonic maceration technique, produces wines with pale color, but more importantly, low tannin and bright kind of bubblegum, cherry, gummy, banana, kirsch character. The second method is called semi-carbonic maceration. So semi-carbonic maceration is almost the same, but slightly different. So the berries, again, whole bunches of berries are going to be put in the tank. The tank is not going to be flushed by CO2. The oxygen is not going to be removed. The tank is going to be closed, and then because of the weight of the berries, the bottom grapes, they're going to release some of the juice. This juice will start the fermentation, and because it starts the fermentation, it will create CO2. Carbon dioxide, which will fill up the tank. And then the top berries, because you have the creation of CO2 and you have the lack of oxygen, they're going to start the intercellular fermentation. And at this point, you can press the grapes, and the grapes can continue the fermentation without the skin. But for some premium wines, what can be done, instead of pressing the grapes when the intercellular fermentation begins, the grapes can be crushed, and the winemaking techniques like punching over, pumping down can be used in order to continue the fermentation on the skin, and gradually, for berries that are still intact, to continue having the intercellular fermentation. And then the grapes can also finish the fermentation on the skin and even have a post-fermentation maceration. So the idea with this kind of semi-carbonic maceration that continues as a normal fermentation, the idea is to better integrate the flavors of carbonic macerations, which gives this kind of cherries, bright cinnamon, kirsch kind of flavors with the regular fermentation flavors, and also extract more tannin. And the final method is called whole bunches with crushed fruit. So it is the way it sounds. So you have regular crushed fruit, and into it you're gonna add whole bunches of berries that are intact. So because the berries are gonna be actually submerged into the juice, you're gonna have a lack of oxygen. You're gonna have whole berries. Because the berries are submerged, they're gonna start the intercellular fermentation while they're in the juice. And then they're gonna, when they reach the 2% of alcohol, they're gonna burst. And then you can continue fermenting and pumping over and punching down until all the berries are crushed. The idea with this technique is to get a more silkier texture, and again that bright cherries, kirsch, bubblegum kind of flavor in the wine. I also need to mention that because you have whole bunches of grapes in all these techniques, it is very important to have ripe stems. Otherwise you can extract the bitter flavor from the stems. And then for the Beaujolais cru wines, they also use large oak vats for fermentation. So in Beaujolais cru wines, they can have some part of the carbonic maceration in the wine, but mainly they produce wines as a regular fermentation, and they age the wines in large oak vats, which gives oak flavor, but a more delicate, subtle aromas of oak. On the end, the appellations, there's 3 appellations that you need to know: Beaujolais, Beaujolais Village, and Beaujolais Cru. Beaujolais, it means that the grapes are going to come from anywhere in Beaujolais. They usually come from that alluvial soil, which is located on the eastern part of Beaujolais and southern part of Beaujolais. There is an appellation called Beaujolais Village. It contains 39 villages that can be labeled on the label, but they rarely appear. And usually Beaujolais Village appellation means that the grapes from different villages are going to be blended under this appellation. For Beaujolais wines, you should expect simple, light red wines. With Beaujolais Village, you should expect a little bit more intensity of flavor, a little bit more concentration. And then the highest quality Beaujolais wines are going to come from Beaujolais Cru appellation. There is 10 villages. For level 3, you need to remember 4 of them. Brully and Fleury are more floral in character, where Moulin-à-Vent and Morgon are more structured Beaujolais wines. And then there are wines that are called Beaujolais Nuovo. They're produced in every 3rd Thursday in November, and they cannot be sold by the growers or merchants after August 31st the next year. Beaujolais and Beaujolais Village appellation can be produced in a Beaujolais Nuovo style. Beaujolais Cru cannot be produced in Beaujolais Nuovo style. So Beaujolais Nuovo means that these wines are going to be made by completely carbonic maceration. They're going to be pale in color, they're going to have very, very low tannins and bright cherries, cranberries, bubblegum, kirsch, cinnamon flavors. Wine person, thanks so much for watching this video. I hope it will help. I'll see you in the next video. Until then, stay thirsty and wise.